Hey boys and girls, I'm Noel Cumberland and I'm going to tell you about Harlan Ellison's The City on the Edge of Forever, the original screenplay edition, published by IDW Comics. Now, it was originally written by science fiction giant Harlan Ellison, but this adaptation was written by Scott and David Tipton. The art is by J.K. Woodward, and Juan Ortiz and Paul Shipper contributed the cover art. Lettering is done by Neil Witaki, and the entire project was edited by Chris Rael for the original episodic release. This collected hardcover edition was edited by Justin Eisinger and Alonzo Simon, and the overall design chores were handled by Claudia Chong. This hardcover edition is 128 pages, but it also has an introduction by Harlan Ellison in the front and a collection of extras at the back, which I'll get to if we have time at the end of the video. But let me tell you about this book. Now, like I said, it's a collection of 6 issues, but it's been re-edited down into a single graphic novel, so it's kind of both at once. Because of that, while it does have acts, the acts are kind of in issue, in the 6 issues, as opposed to one overall structure for the entire thing. It does have that. It's just not implemented the same way it would be if it was originally written to be a single volume. That's okay. I think it adds a little bit to the story. Now, if you're at all familiar with Star Trek, the original series, you recognize this title as one of the most beloved episodes of the show. Everybody talks about this, and it won lots and lots of awards. But one person who didn't really love it was Harlan Ellison. The reason for that is, in television, things change, and it's not always one person whose vision makes it onto the screen. Well, being one of the greats in science fiction, and the reason that they sought him out is because he was so great. Well, yeah, but he wasn't a television writer. So he didn't take well to writing quickly, he didn't take well to changes, and he absolutely didn't take well to other people trying to contribute to what he was trying to do. That caused a big problem between him and Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry that lasted for decades. Fortunately, the show still made it on the air. And because of that, and because his name was attached to it, that actually helped Star Trek to get 2 more seasons on TV. So there was a big plus that came from that. But Harlan Ellison was never satisfied with what happened with this episode, and he wasn't very shy about telling people about it. All right, but that's enough about the TV episode. Let me tell you about the book, because reading this book is a real eye-opener. Now, like the TV episode, this story is Jim Kirk's story. Okay, and that's whose arc it is that we are following here. There are some other characters in here who do have their own little mini arcs, but it's a Jim Kirk story, and he is Horatio Hornblower in space. He is the salty captain. He has a woman in every port. He doesn't let himself get tied down, but in this story, he is humanized in a way that had not happened yet for that character, and it's extremely well done. Now, there are 3 main parts to this book. You've got the setup, where our heroes get in trouble, you got the shenanigans they have to go through to try to fix it, and the aftermath where some of these characters end up being changed forever. And it's an amazing arc that's very, very well done in this story. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show you kind of how they brought that whole thing together. So let's take a look inside. Now you can see the design is really nice. It's kind of a prestige format, so I really like this. And if we look at, all right, here we go. We start out the same way every Star Trek episode starts, really. They're orbiting a weird planet and there's a weird thing happening. In this case, all of their chronometers are running backwards. They don't know why. There's something weird going on with this planet. But then we see something we've never seen in Star Trek before or since. Bam, there's a drug deal going on. I know it doesn't look like it, but trust me, you get into these word balloons, this is a drug deal. That's never happened. But remember, this was written in the 60s, so that was very topical. All right, so you got this drug deal happening, and look at the way the page is structured. All right, pretty standard. You've got your standard kind of layout, horizontal, easy to follow and everything. And then dude takes the drugs, and things go a little wackadoodle, okay? And look at how they laid this out. You've got a big splash page with an inset. So this is what's going on in this guy's head, and then this is reality down here. I like the use of the sound effects here, and I love the artwork here to really depict what's going on there. All right. As we go forward, this guy's use of drugs causes a major problem, almost blows up the ship, and he freaks out. So he goes back to his drug dealer and says, that's it, I'm done, I'm never going to buy from you again, and I'm turning you in. Here's where we see the next thing that never happens in Star Trek. We got a crew member whacking another crew member. That never happens either, or very rarely. So this is the first instance of that in Star Trek history. we move on to something a little bit different. Now look at how this is laid out. You've got some of these panels are just kind of skewed because there's chaos going on here. But the good guys are on it, and you see it starts to straighten out here because they're in charge. But the bad guy does what all the bad guys in Star Trek do. He escapes through the transporter, and here he goes down to this planet. So they're going to have to go after him. All right. So there's your setup right there. There's a little bit more exposition to tell them that they are at a weird planet where time doesn't have any meaning and everything converges here, and so the time stream could be accessed. All right, there's your major problem, because now, because they're all scientists, they're like, ooh, show us the Earth. They get to 1930s, and bad guy takes advantage, says, ooh, I'm going to grab Yeoman Rand, I'm going to distract everybody, and then zip, he jumps into the time stream, and he escapes. Right there. Now what's going to happen? Well, we move on. All right. Now they're trying to figure out what's going on. They decide to go up to the ship to figure out exactly what they're going to do about it. And they get there. Uh-oh. The Enterprise isn't the Enterprise anymore. It's filled with these renegades. And they're not what they thought they were. So they go back down to the planet. And they say, hey, we got to figure out how we can fix everything. Let's talk to these Time Lords. Can we go back to just before dude jumped into the time stream and fix everything? So they let him do that. All right. There's the rest of the setup. And then we get into the kind of meat of the story. Because they get to Earth in the 1930s. All right. And they're going through trying to figure out, okay, what did the guy change? How do we stop him from changing it? And then we see a strange continuity error. Or actually, it's not an error because none of this had happened yet. But you got Kirk telling Spock that it was humans that taught Vulcans how to fly in space. All right, that doesn't mean anything to you if you're not a Star Trek fan, but for me as a Star Trek fan, I was blown away when I first read that. It's amazing what could have happened with Star Trek had they stayed with Harlan Ellison's vision here. Enough of that. Let's move on. So, you've got, your standard quest then. They've got to figure out, okay, where is this guy coming back? How can we intercept him? And what is it he's trying to do? Well, they had some clues that told him that the guy was going to actually save somebody who's supposed to die. There she is. That's your MacGuffin. So she's the one who's going to have to die. She's the one that they're going to have to figure out, okay, great, when does she die and how do we make sure that it happens? But Kirk being Kirk, falls in love with her. Spock, not too happy about it, but hey, Kirk's got a Kirk. You know what I'm saying? All right, so we move on. And you can see, as soon as he starts falling in love with her, look at the way things change, okay? You've got a little bit brighter layout here. You've got the big splash panel with a very kind of cheery kind of scene there, and then these insets. You've got them holding hands just about. You've got them smiling and laughing with each other. I mean, it's a really well-designed depiction of them falling in love. Kirk's hanging out at her place. They're talking, all that kind of fun stuff. But then Spock has to confront him. He's like, you can't do this. This woman is supposed to die. That's the whole reason we're here. Kirk's falling for her. And look how dark that is. We don't even have panels anymore. The way this is laid out, this conversation is so dark and it's so well depicted because, hey, this is the crux of the story right here. And this is where Jim's got to decide, am I going to save the universe like I'm supposed to? Or am I going to be selfish and save the girl? And he's not really sure. As we move forward in the story, more things happen, and then all of a sudden, bad dude shows up. They get to the point where that guy jumped into the time stream. They try to chase him down, but he's elusive, and he gets away. All right? Because they weren't able to solve the problem right there, Kirk just gets deeper and deeper until, there you go, Kirk's got a Kirk. Moving on. Look at the way this is laid out, though. Look at the way. This is very standard kind of storytelling. You got your 6 panels here, you got your 6 panels here. They're saying, this is your status quo. It might end up being the way things are going to be. All right, and it continues to go that way, but then it changes here when Spock gets back involved. He's like, we can't do this. We've got to save the universe. That's what we're here for. All right, so we move on, and then you start to see it's a little bit more action. Things get skewed just a little bit more because of that until we get to here where bad guy taking a shot at Kirk. You've got another splash page with a couple of insets to show the details. Okay, good storytelling there, good structure in the way they're doing that. Then we get to your sage, the guy who's going to tell them how they're going to solve the problem. This guy, what's funny, he's designed to look like Harlan Ellison. It's really kind of clever. If you look, that's probably the best version of it right there that you can see. If you know what Harlan Ellison looks like, that's him right there. I love it. All right, so we move on. Now Kirk is starting to accept the fact that he's going to have to let this woman he's fallen in love with die in order to save the entire world. All right, and time is pushing back against their presence. And bad things are starting to happen to the point where that guy they just met, the sage old man, look at that, he gets zapped. He's trying to help, and he gets zapped. And how dark it gets after that. And look at the haphazard layout that you've got here. It's telling the story without having to tell the story. I love the way they've got that done there. It strains out a little bit because we see Edith Keeler again, but this is it. This is it. So you've got your close-ups. These are your three main players. Bad guy, Kirk, Spock. What's going to happen? The bad guy actually tries to save her. And Spock has to stop the bad guy from saving her. Kirk just has to stand by. And when that happens, the entire universe switches back. And you can see that in the way this is designed. All right, you don't have any outlines on these panels. You just see Kirk's pain. And it looks eternal. Because that is the shift in his character right there. That's what does it. They wrap up the story. Everything's back to normal. But in here you see the relationship between Kirk and Spock has now changed forever. And we move on. It's a wonderful story. Very, very well done. In the back, you've got some cover art from the various individual issues. You've got a special section to show how they did some of the photorealistic art, how they put it all together. And then this section back here is really cool because there are a lot of Easter eggs that are in this book that you could check out. Now, I highly recommend this book. This thing is fantastic. It's well written, it's well adapted, it's well laid out, and it's well produced. So thank you for taking some time to listen. I really hope you check out Harlan Ellison's The City on the Edge of Forever, the original Teleplay.